everybody, and welcome to another episode of Death By, where contestants will earn reps for their arguments for a chance to stand on top of the podium pedestal. I am your host, Lauren Kalil. Whoever I decide has the best argument through the final round will earn 30 seconds to talk about a topic of their choosing. But before we get into today's fully packed episode, we want to thank our sponsors, Garmin. I have been using a Garmin for several years now, and it is my favorite fitness tracker from everything to health, my workouts, sleep, HRV, any type of health metrics you are going to find inside the Garmin and inside the app that you will have on your phone. One of the best things is I can go on a trip, I can go cover multiple CrossFit events at once, and I won't even need to bring my charger because this thing lasts up to 16 days of battery life. One of my other favorite features is that it will break down your workouts into 3 different components, whether it's anaerobic, whether it's high aerobic or low aerobic, to help you better see what type of fitness you need to reach your goals. If you want to try Garmin today, we have a link in our description. Go ahead and click that. The one that I am wearing, it is the Epic Pro Gen 2 Sapphire Edition. Several fun ones that you can find on there to help you reach all of your fitness and health goals. Now, on today's episode, we have 2-time Affiliate Cup champion and seminar staff head trainer, James Hobart. CrossFit Games athlete, Tim Paulson. And CrossFit Games athlete, analyst, programmer, and so much more, Adrian Conway. Gentlemen, it has been a crazy last, I don't know even how long it's been, 4 days, 5 days, a week. There is so much to talk about. I know that we have a lot of different opinions on the show. It's going to be fun, but do we feel ready?
Ready.
As ready as we're going to be.
Did something happen?
What? What happened?
What's been going on the last couple of days?
I think just stuff that happens every season, honestly, James. I don't know why everyone's up in a bunch, you know. It seems like it's just another year.
I like it. Adrian's already off to a good start. Let's play Death By. We're going to get right into topic number 1. We've had this conversation on the show before. Should CrossFit sport separate from CrossFit HQ and the methodology? But now that the chips have fallen when it comes to all of the carnage, I think as Sean called it, that we saw on the leaderboard with individual quarterfinals penalties, we have athletes like Paige Power and Sydney Wells, just to name a few, that are not advancing to semifinals. So is this CrossFit's watershed moment the turning point of where the sport and HQ break off? Why or why not? Adrian, we will let you start topic number 1.
The new guy gets to kick it off. I can't wait. To me, the answer is no. And I certainly hope not. And I feel as though that we need each other. And I say we need each other as in the CrossFit Games needs the CrossFit methodology as much as the methodology needs the games. I think about my intro to CrossFit all the way back in 2011. The whole reason I had interest was because I watched a guy named Graham Holmberg win the CrossFit Games the year before. And I was like, you know what? I think I can do that thing. And I want to try to beat him at that thing and go do it. And that's what led me to then get my level 1 and to have the curiosity about what the methodology is. I was a skeptic from day 1 about what CrossFit was, but the games was kind of like that first hit, that intro drug. It was what got me hooked. And then all of a sudden I started to fall in love with the methodology. But in my opinion, I think that we got to have this balance of if the sport is going to be a pillar within the methodology, it is going to be our shout and our broadcast to the masses. We've got to be able to clean up some of the limitations and the problems that we're dealing with. I think the number one way to do that is through communication and some forethought, which we show that sometimes we're a little bit slow to churn and learn some of those lessons. But in my opinion, they absolutely need each other. I think that it is certainly a need. And I think that this is how still the masses are exposed to our methodology. And then we get them with the love and the training and the results for their family and friends down the road.
Adrian says, keep the love, no divorce. They are going to stay married. 2 points for Adrian. James, you've sat on the fence a bit, given pros and cons to both sides. What are your thoughts here?
I think
put his hands on
Adrian's
his
answer deserved at least 3 points. But anyway, that's beside the point.
Why does everybody think that they are in charge of the points? I am in charge of the points unless Sean comes in and overrules, which she's only allowed to do sometimes.
Well, it seems to be the case that everyone feels like they're in charge of scoring nowadays. But anyway.
Ooh, come on.
I don't mean that.
Zing.
I don't.
That's all
That's
we're
a
clipping
highlight
for
on
social
social
media.
media.
Yeah, please don't. What I want to say, I guess here's what I would like to see. I agree with Adrian on this. What I would like to see when people talk about this is, what does the future look like where these two are separated? So every time I've heard this conversation come up, the games and the methodology need to be separate. I don't know what the heck that means. And no one has presented to me an example of what this actually looks like. In my mind, I think the sport would maybe break off from the methodology when the sport was something different than the methodology requires and tests. Like, hey, every year we're going to have the same exact 4 tests at the games and the same exact 4 tests at semifinals. Like, in my mind, that is when something is separate from the methodology. I don't see how the two live independently of one another completely. And again, I don't want to steal from him, but I think the one thing that Adrian said that should have gotten a lot more points here was when he talked about, hey, there are some hurdles, some obstacles, some areas of friction that can be cleaned up and need to be cleaned up for the growth of both. I completely agree with that. I think we're still getting to a point where we're underutilizing technology to make this easier for all parties, and hopefully we can get there. And that allows for, I don't know, an easier review process of videos, for example, or easier judging of videos, for example. So I would just like to see, and I'm going to sit on the fence again. There you go. I would just like to see, what the hell do people mean when they say, should they split apart? Like, what does that future even look like? I have not heard a single good example.
I'm still going to give you 2
All right,
points,
I have
though,
a good
James,
example.
because okay, and that is true. People have said that they want to see the separation of church and state, essentially, for CrossFit and CrossFit sport. But what does that look like, Tim? You might have an answer.
I mean, honestly, not an answer, but I think, like, for me, it's like, I think the organization of CrossFit struggles with certain things, and they're kind of repetitive, like communication and things like that. Like, they get dinged for it all of the time. And I think this is just another example where communication was just not very good. I mean, you hear stories about athletes, the leaderboard finalizing, and appeals are still open. Like, things like that, where it's like, there's just this, it seems like there's just gigantic void of information coming from headquarters. So, like, I don't think that this is the time that they separate. And again, I don't think they necessarily should separate. What I think is that there needs to be much clearer delineation between the sport and the methodology, at least within the company. Like, a clearer delineation of resources. If you're sponsoring the games, you are sponsoring the games. There's staff that, like, and I know they currently only do work on the games, but like, there's a lot of, it seems like from the outside, a lot of cross pollination where people who work on seminar staff also work on the games and vice versa. And there's like a lot of intermingling. So it's like, I feel like people would or could take it a little bit more seriously if it was almost like there's CrossFit, and then you apply to work at CrossFit the sport or CrossFit the methodology, and we keep them at least organizationally and from the communication perspective, like, very separate, so that there's, I don't know, we don't get the line blurred where it's like everybody gets angry at CrossFit the sport for something, and they're just angry at all of CrossFit. You know, like, it's, they can't delineate their anger from like one or the other, or blame one or the other. So, like, I guess my solution would be, like, have CrossFit HQ the holding company, and then have CrossFit Training Education and Affiliate, and then have CrossFit Sport, and they're still run by Don Fall, whoever else, but it's like there's at least clear delineation so that you can kind of go up the chain with either one, and you're not using resources from one to fund the other, to do the other, X, Y, or Z. That would be my, like, I guess, short-term solution. But I don't think that they would be better off without each other, because very similar to Adrian, I did the open, and that's what made me want to do CrossFit. Like, I wanted to compete in CrossFit, and I kind of, like, fell in love with everything else, like, during that process. Like, it didn't, I wouldn't have fallen in love with the CrossFit methodology without the sport of CrossFit.
3 points for Tim. It seems to me, and I'm curious what each of your opinions are, that we're almost at this fork in the road. CrossFit needs money. Having 25% advance to quarterfinals was a great way to make money. But now we talk about, the resources. Are there enough resources? Are there enough people to even get the job done in a way that we feel is just for the athletes? But how how do you go forward if you have these two conflicting things happening?
I think that kind of comes back to my point. It's like we don't know what that quarterfinals revenue increase is going towards. Like maybe it's funding training. We don't know. Whereas if they were taking all money to develop from the sport of CrossFit and it was being poured back into the ecosystem of the sport of CrossFit, then maybe it would be easy to say like, oh yeah, they just have however many million more dollars in revenue from a higher percentage of quarterfinals. And they could say openly, we hired a much bigger video review team to handle the bigger percentage that we're taking to quarterfinals. So we can do this to a standard that we like. And they might have done that. I don't know, but they certainly didn't say anything about it. So it's like, you're kind of just left to wonder, like, what are they doing with that money? I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I would say too, I know I chimed in a little bit late. I apologize. But when I think about the games, I think about generating leads and interest, right? They're generating leads and interest for their true business model. Their true business model is affiliates and courses, right? So between those two, they're going to utilize the funds that they bring in from those leads and generated interest to help populate revenue on the side of these other things. So if they decide that the games is generating more and more interest and more leads and funding the way that they can breed and grow more seminars and or more affiliates, then I think they're going to certainly push that cash flow back in so that they can exponentially grow in those areas, because that's their direct source of income. I think what CrossFit has to do is continue to be sensitive to the fact that they're not, and I think the community at large, you got to be aware, folks, they're not making money off the elite athletes that go to semifinals in the CrossFit games. They're not making money directly off these athletes. Those athletes certainly act as great spokesmen and spokeswomen and represent us at large, but they're making money off the everyday athlete. So CrossFit has to be sensitive to the fact that these everyday athletes are not being viewed as treated fairly when the results are skewed or the judging's not correct, or, they become unhappy because they're like, man, well, if my videos aren't getting watched, why would I sign up? Why would I do this thing? So if they're feeling shunned or left kind of like in the margins, then I think there's going to be a hit overall to the company when it comes to letting 25% in. They're not going to choose to play if they don't feel like they're being valued and or treated fairly that way. So if they can be sensitive to that, and like what Tim's saying, allocate these resources so that it is a greater experience next year for the everyday athlete that signs up, I think then we can get a winning formula here moving forward, where it's like, hey, everyone's having a great time, everyone's getting judged appropriately, and CrossFit can then therefore make more money and get momentum on the backside of things.
I think this is one of the frustrating things is that this seems like a classic CrossFit thing to do, in the sense of I think the 25% quarterfinals actually went really well. There was a bunch of people at our gym that loved it, that they made a big thing. There was a lot of good that happened last weekend, but it's overshadowed by all the negative media on their fuck up. Sorry, kids.
Minus
It's like
point.
it gets overshadowed by the bad press, and that's got to be frustrating for them. But I think again, it comes back to communication, laying things out beforehand, as simple things as they set a hard and fast deadline for the leaderboard. It's like, guys, have we not learned not to do that yet? The leaderboard is closed when the leaderboard's closed. When we are happy with the video review process, the leaderboard's closed. And also, okay, sorry, I don't want to go off on a massive tangent, but things like that, where it's just it's a little frustrating, because it's we've made this mistake before. We've rushed a leaderboard closed, or we've set a firm date, we've had to push it back, and it's just guys, stop, just stop, just communicate better, communicate over the course of the weekend, let everyone know, hey, video 1 is complete, we're done, we're moving on to video 2, or little things like that could go a long way to letting people know that they are hearing them in a more public forum, and it's not all just shadows and mysteries back at CrossFit HQ.
Well, and I think that kind of goes back to the original question, because I think if you asked affiliate owners what they thought of the open and quarterfinals, at least the ones I've spoken to, they've said this was a huge success. They were able to program the quarterfinals workouts in class. People were able to have judges. You were able to stay in a lane, and it was super accessible. But then if you ask the elite athletes, or at least what you're seeing of the people who have been outspoken about it, they don't see it as a success. So that is why I ask the question, would it be better for affiliates and CrossFit HQ to be separate from that 1% of the elites.
Yeah, how many elite athletes have said that though? Like, and I'm asking, I'm not being rhetorical here. And I wonder because I have empathy. If this has been your season and you've trained thousands of hours and you didn't make it and got penalized and got pushed down below the 40 cutoff, like I empathize for you. Like I can do both. I can say, hey, standards could have been better, but also like that really sucks. And I've been there and I wish that wasn't the case. I guess my question is like, how many elite athletes are really unhappy with the season? I don't feel like everyone who qualified is not there. They seem plenty happy. It's just the athletes who got bumped below that line. And though that is a frustrating thing and an unfortunate thing, it doesn't seem like that's a lot or a majority of. So I just still have that question in the back of my head.
It's funny. I feel like it's been kind of radio silent from people who qualified, like people who didn't have an issue or whatever. Like, Vellner makes a joke because that's what Vellner does.
Yeah.
He makes jokes. But like, other than that, like, I feel like it's been kind of quiet from like PFAA or, like people who qualified and didn't get a penalty, like they haven't said much about it. And like, part of it may be that they're just choosing to keep their mouth shut because they don't want to piss anybody off. And that's certainly an option. But yeah, I feel like obviously all we're hearing is the negative right now because I just think there just has been nothing said from the people who, kind of got through unscathed and didn't have an issue with the penalties.
And Tim, you make a good point. I'm going to put a graphic over because it's a kind of a long response, but I did reach out to the PFAA to see if they had any comment on the penalties and what had been happening. And they responded and said, over the past few years, we have broached the conversation on how to improve online competitions. The issues around the penalties this year are nothing new. We have seen similar problems from the early years of the Open onward. Many prominent athletes, coaches, and media have highlighted solutions publicly for over a decade. When CrossFit is interested in making progress towards a better sport, we believe the future should be determined in conjunction with those that it means the most to, the athletes. So that was their response on the penalties.
That's fair. I mean, I think I was just having this conversation with one of my athletes this weekend who did not have any video problems, but just that, like, it seems it's just the same old frustrating problem of like, there's a lot of people in the community who have a lot of really good ideas, and it's like, I guess, like, that's kind of frustrating to me sometimes. Again, like I'm not actively participating in the sport right now, but it's like there are so many people I talk to that have so many seemingly pretty simple ideas that are not like that are pretty cost effective, all these things. And it's like, it just kind of seems like it falls on deaf ears sometimes. And I don't know why that is at HQ. And like that can be kind of frustrating, I think, to a lot of people. And I think that was kind of nicely what the PFA was saying basically is that like we're trying to talk to them. They are listening, but like we're not seeing the change, happen in real time for whatever reason, and I think that's kind of the vibe that I'm getting right now is that like there's so many easy ways to not have this situation happen or be this controversial. And it's like I think some of it comes down to like I've talked a bunch about like again friends and like whatnot that the movements that you pick in online competition, how those scores play out on the leaderboard, like these are things that any coach of a high level athlete could look at immediately and be like, I could see that as being a problem, which makes it our responsibility to make sure it's not a problem for sure. Like we need to take accountability for that, but also like, why not just avoid the problem? Like if we don't need to do step ups, you could do 3 or 4 other movements that are very similar, have a similar stimulus, similar rep score, all these things that wouldn't have these issues come up. So I guess like that's where I think of it as a frustrating standpoint is like any elite athlete or elite coach can look at a workout for an online qualifier setting and you could be like, I think this and this are going to be a problem. We can probably address this and this, but we can't really do anything about this one. And that's where it can be frustrating is like that unknown. Like again, like yeah. Oh, sorry, I'm taking up a lot of camera time today.
No,
I feel very strongly about this.
I think that's a really good point. The addressing maybe specific That's why we don't see the push up, right? Because it's just a really frustrating thing for us to judge, even though the foundational standard is pretty clear. Part of me though thinks that's a path to nowhere because we can apply this argument to almost any movement we have, right? Like at some point, I do really feel like, coaches or athletes are always going to find a way to push the limit of a range of motion of the movement. It's what they do. It's why you exist as a competitor, is to take it to that line. So part of me kind of wonders like, well, I could just apply that to any movement that shows up. So I don't know if that's a problem we can minimize, but I do think that's a problem inherent to the state of competition. So at some point it's like, well, then we don't need to have a competition. Because I could be like, well, the chin hair was just over the bar for the, chin above bar pull up. So I worry about that argument a little bit. I think maybe a better argument is, how do we make sure the judging standard or the review standard is as ubiquitously and fairly applied across as many people as possible. And to that, I do think there's a technological solution, and I'm a super nerd in that way. That's also a future maybe nobody wants, but I don't know if I agree with you on the movement one. To some extent I do, but I also worry about where that leads us.
Adrian, you program and coach athletes. What do you think about the box step up?
Yeah, Adrian, please. Yeah, take some.
If you're asking me what I think about the movement, I really love the movement. I love to train the movement. I love to do the movement. I love to program the movement. I don't like it necessarily for this particular scenario. And I say that because I think about a couple things like the loading for it. If you hand athletes a 70-pound dumbbell in each hand and a 50-pound dumbbell in each hand, do the exact same movement, it's a bit of a different discussion that we're having, because that end range at lockout is a reprieve and a rest position that a lot of athletes would desire at the top versus this high cycle rate that we see with 50s and 35s in each hand. So there's consideration with load there. There's also consideration with dumbbell placement. You put these dumbbells in the front rack position. We also can't just leave the hip hanging back behind the load that's on your shoulders as we lock out the leg, because that's just blowing up your lower back, and that's going to be a problem too. So I think about small tweaks just in my mind that we could use this exact same movement, switch it up just a little bit, make it easier on the judge, make it easier on the athlete and coach. My world, thank God, would be a lot easier if that was the case too. But I just look at it honestly, Lauren, from this perspective, is that it's a step up. We kind of have the understanding, a lot like Tim was expressing, in what this is trying to test. And we just make it a step all the way over the box. And then everyone's just like, oh, this is black and this is white and that's a movement and that's not. It might not hit exactly all 10 aspects of the focus that we really wanted to test, or whatever 10 of the general physical skills that we had the desire to kind of create limitations around, but it's really close and it's really obvious to everyone of like, hey, they made it over the box or they didn't.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to move on.
The biggest thing is like, okay. Yeah.
No, I feel like we should talk about just box step ups the next hour, because that's what everybody wants to listen to after this last week.
We're going to move on to topic number 2. You will still have an opportunity to potentially talk about the box step ups with moving forward. We're moving forward. We're looking at the future. How can we make things better? So Dave Castro, he alludes in his week in review that in future years, this system will evolve. However, he said that online competitions are not going away. They are not going away, people. As much as we want them to, they're going to stay. But with that being said, what is your solution for future years on how to best approach this stage in the competition? James, we will start this round with you.
Oh boy. I think one of the simple things is we really swung the pendulum in the other direction of like, let's make this as easy, I think, or easier for as many people to participate and do as possible. And in the past, I think some of the quarterfinals requirements and even open requirements, the taping, the sections to work out, have been, from an affiliate standpoint, a little bit of a pain, a bit of a pain in some cases. From an athlete standpoint, maybe protective of things like video review, but also a pain. So I think we should swing somewhere back to the middle. So I think standardizing like what camera angles are needed. I think it's probably really smart to require athletes, even though it's a pain in the butt, if you are going to make it to semis in the games, we should require 2 camera angles. So I think the requirement for like making that review process as foolproof as possible is really easy. I think my pipe dream idea is to use some sort of AI to judge or review videos, and also review the fidelity of videos. Like, are we getting a actual video and edited video and AI tweaked video? So I think that would be really cool. We could call it something awesome like the Bosinator 2.0 or like the TDC 1000. So, I mean, I'm semi-serious with those pieces there. The other thing is maybe we start to see, and I think Rogue has done this with some success, and I've heard a lot of people talk about this, is I don't know how at some point of the season it splits off between like the community games and then having this elite or professional division. Because I still think the open should combine both. I think it's very unique to us as CrossFit in a sport of fitness that we have the elites and the amateurs side by side in a competition, though separated by hundreds of thousands of points and people. But maybe at some point in the season, that kind of splits off and you pay to play at that elite level, but also the resources given to you are a little bit greater. The review you're afforded is a little bit more significant. So those are just a couple ideas I've had, and I think I'm a broken record on talking about those.
Yeah, but those are some really good solutions. I'm going to give you 5 points for that answer. AI and pay to play, baby. We don't let me forget. We're going to circle back because I have a follow-up question for AI, but I first want to go to Tim now.
All right, so I have 2 solutions. Number one, I think, is like, and this is kind of hard and fast, or it's not hard and fast to implement, but like there needs to be more foresight to what videoing an online workout actually entails. So if we look at the workout with the step up, snatches, and rower, in order to see the rower monitor, the camera can basically only be placed in one place. So like when you do that, you inevitably are going to skew your ability to view the other movements, and that's where James' idea of 2 cameras might come into play, so that like the other movements are more clearly seen and you're not seeing them from basically the worst angle possible, looking down and up at it because you need the camera close enough to the rower monitor. So I think that's like one consideration that could be made that could just make it much easier to see quality videos. But here's my big picture better solution. So get rid of quarterfinals. They're done. I don't think we need them. The open is still 3 weeks, but the open now runs from Wednesday or Thursday night to Monday night. And there's 2 workouts a week. Still stays affiliate friendly. You can do a class workout on Friday, a class workout on Monday. People still have the opportunity to retest, blah, blah, blah. But you get 6 tests over the 3 weeks so that we can have some more quarterfinals-esque flair for the elites, for everyone to play. If you can't do 1 or 2 workouts because you don't have the skills, it's not as big of a deal because there's 6 of them. CrossFit bumps up the price a little bit to kind of compensate for some revenue loss there. And most importantly, what that does is it gets the online qualifying stage of the season done in one foul swoop, way ahead of semifinals, so that there are weeks, if they want, to firmly and confidently review videos, finalize leaderboards, and nobody's stressing the hell out about like, oh my God, the leaderboard needs to be done 4 days after the competition closes because age group semifinals start in 7 days. Like it gets rid of some of those kind of time crunch timelines that we currently have with the online season being so spread out. So that's my solution and my proposition for what to do next year.
I really like that, Tim, but my quick follow-up question to you is then if you get a 20% penalty and all of these other people are on that leaderboard, you're going to be shot way down. And I think that that's one of the arguments people have now with the 25% in quarterfinals. Or are you okay
I think,
with
but
that?
again, I'm fine with that. Again, it's like, but that's assuming they do better. There's a better standard for video submission, for video review, all of that stuff. Because again, I think a lot of these penalties that we saw with the box step ups, like I watched a lot of videos that I was like, that's dog shit. And it was that simple. I also watched a lot of videos where I looked at it and I was like, man, even if I slow it down and I pause it, I'd like, it's like I would call that good. I don't see the major penalty here, man. So it's like, and that comes down to the like where the camera had to be placed because of what the rower was doing in that workout. So like that's the part that like I think if the video review process is cleaner, my idea is totally fine. And it still has a lot of benefits for the rest of the season. But that just comes down to like CrossFit HQ making a more firm review process. And like taking some feedback and lessons from this year and actually cleaning that up for next year.
3 points for Tim. Adrian, what is in your future hourglass of CrossFit?
Yeah, hourglass. Well, optimally, if you could dream it up, I agree with James on the AI perspective of things. It kind of takes the decision making out of human hands. Of course, it would take probably years of development, and I don't know if we're there yet. And it would take a lot of practice and or preparation for that. But AI to judge movement standards and full range of motion issues, that would be the dream. But in the meantime, I think that right now, from my perspective, over the next year, CrossFit's got to take some onus on not just who's programming, designing, and thinking about the execution of workouts and the stimulus and what is being tested, but their increased interaction with coaches and athletes, even about movements and standards, and really having some type of interaction, even if it's through the off season of what are athletes capable of? What are they doing? How are they moving? What are opinions and perspectives on things? Because I think about how often it seems to be that the powers at bay can be separated from the elite level of athletes that are actually training and doing the thing on a day in and day out basis. And somehow that can skew the understanding of what might come through in regards to videos and what might come through in regards to potential scores. So to me, that solution too is a bit more of an ingrained interaction on a bit of a person to person or intimate level with high level coaches and high level athletes through the off season, so that we can have an understanding on some of these movements that are going to come down the pipeline and how they might play out. And I think it will help us troubleshoot future issues and or pain points. Lastly, what I think we can do right away is a week before quarters, every movement that's going to be a part of it gets released. There is a video. There is clear explanation. There's someone on the camera, just like me. It could be Chuck Carswell, everybody's favorite CrossFit coach, saying, hey, this is going to be a point of emphasis. This is what open hip looks like. This is what it doesn't look like. This is what will be a no rep. This is going to be a good rep. This is the equipment that you'll need. We don't need to know the workouts, but we need to know every movement, every detail, and every standard. This will help visualization from the judge's perspective, from the athlete's perspective, and from the coach's perspective. Oh, by the way, it even helps the gym manager understand what's coming down the pipeline, keep the timeline the same, keep the execution the same as it was this year, plenty of time and all that great stuff. But a week ahead, we need to know all the movements. It'll be fair. It can be clean. And I think it won't be 100% foolproof, but I think it will help improve the quality of movement that we see in the point of emphasis on what's submitted on the other side with the videos.
I love that idea.
Me too.
4 points for Adrian. My question, though, is would CrossFit bite on that? Because does it swing too far away from the unknown and the unknowable?
I hope not, Lauren. And I say that because I find myself leaning more towards staying unknown and unknowable. But even myself, with my convictions and what I see from our sport, to me, this is what is needed. So I love unknown and unknowable. And I would be the first to be like, no, don't do that. Unknown is awesome and unknowable is even cooler. But also, I think this is kind of a meet in the middle aspect of it gives us what the methodology was founded on. We don't know the workouts. We don't know the rep schemes. We don't even know the loading. But we do have an idea what's coming down the pipeline, and it helps create this universal approach for the smallest gym to the biggest gym to the everyday athlete to the elite athlete.
And how many, I mean, what, there was 20 movements this year. I mean, it's like, that is doable, I think, for all the movements that could show up, and you'd still have a big question mark of how that thing is going to get served up to you. That's a pretty cool idea.
Wouldn't that require a media department though?
Yeah, here we go.
No, but seriously, that's a whole nother rabbit hole we go down. But I thought about that too. I was like, yeah, they're going to have to invest into this process. So they'd have to buy into it for sure. But yeah, you're right, Tim.
No, I think it's a great idea. Yeah.
That could truly be a whole other topic, which I think we've covered in various ways. But I do want to go back to how James brought up AI, because ironically enough, right before we recorded this episode, I received an email about AI, and I was told, I haven't verified this, but I was told that, quote, right now I can video myself doing a movement with AI, load the workout into an AI engine, and produce a workout done in whatever time domain I want. They continue to say in this email, within 2 years at most, everyone will have access to do this through an app on their iPhone for free. When we talk about keeping online competitions, is there a fear that whether it's a few or a significant number of athletes are going to start cheating through the hands of AI?
I mean, this is kind of the
about to rock our world regardless.
Yeah, I mean, this is also kind of the buzzword, right? So it's like, I'm a little bit tongue in cheek when I think it'd be cool to have some sort of technology that could help us judge. But at the same time, because that's like the cool thing to say nowadays, but at the same time, I do think there's a way to use it, and it's like assists us in doing this. Such and such video gets flagged for % of errors, then it gets an in-person review, and then, you know, it gets a second in-person review or something like that. I think the cheaters will always find a way to cheat, and the people who aren't going to cheat won't. And we'll have to find a way to identify that and deal with it. It'll probably make some elements of an online competition more difficult, but I don't see another way of spreading competition as quickly as we all want it to. Quote, everyone says sport needs to grow, sport needs to grow. Unfortunately, and this is opinion of one, I don't see it growing at the speed or rate that I think we all want, or that I sense everybody wants, through in-person competitions only. I think you have to lean into the online maybe more than we're all comfortable with right now, but I also could be way wrong there. Like, I do miss a lot of elements of in-person competition that I got to really enjoy in my early years of CrossFit. So that's not lost on me.
I think we just opened up a can of worms about what the show is not actually about, and that AI is going to change our world forever, whether we like it or not, in the next 2 years. And it doesn't, like, it could be CrossFit, like, it doesn't matter. Like, it's coming forward at a rapid pace, and shit's going to change. And it's not just CrossFit video submissions that are going to be affected. So
Maybe all of our jobs. Ha 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 ha. Okay, let's
That was
move
devastating.
on.
Way to just take the air out of the room. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe they will come for our jobs.
Maybe we're all homeless and unemployed by the time this show airs. Moving on to topic number 3. With individual quarterfinal penalties taking up a big chunk of time and, of course, resources, age group leaderboards, they're supposed to be finalized tomorrow, Wednesday, and then semifinals for them kicking off just about a week later. With that being said, should CrossFit rethink the timeline of the season? We will start this round with Tim.
I mean, yeah, probably. A week turnaround is just really tight. And I mean, that's assuming best case scenario. I mean, like, I don't even know. Like, I have a couple age groupers that are in the semifinals category, and I don't know if they've really heard of any of their videos yet. And I've heard something similar from a lot of the, like, people that are on proven tracks and things like that as well. Like, there's just, because the individuals took up so much time and resources this year, like, I don't think they could have foreseen that. Maybe they thought they gave themselves enough time, but I mean, I think either way, competition closed to competition starting 10 days is not a lot of time. And I mean, I think, yes, it needs to be bumped out pretty significantly if they want to give themselves enough time to communicate adequately, make sure that everyone feels that the leaderboard is legitimate, that it's verified, all of these things. So yeah, I think I'm just a hard yes that it's a little too tight for the age groupers.
2 points for Tim. Adrian?
Yeah, they certainly do. And the reason is because, I mean, look at when the CrossFit Games is for the teens and for the masters or the age group at large. It's after the CrossFit Games. What are we rushing for here, people, to get these semifinals out of the way? I mean, I got athletes that are like in a scuffle. They're trying to recover from what they put themselves through quarters to give their best efforts going forward to semis. Now they've got an opportunity. They're waiting on the results. And then equally, they're psychologically and physically trying to prepare for their biggest competition of the year in semifinals if they want to have the opportunity to go ahead and, of course, make the move to the CrossFit Games. So in my opinion, the answer is yes. Do we have to actually continue to manipulate the season at large? I don't think so. I think a 2-week buffer or 2-week window, so an additional 2 weeks to the week that they already have, 3 weeks in total to get things finalized and get it cleaned up, seems like a logical step in the right direction. I love the excitement, so I'm going to contradict almost my initial statement. I love the excitement of this time of year, though, so I don't think that we need to reinvent the wheel with the schedule. I love how everybody's talking about the reps. Everybody's talking about the judging. Everybody's talking about what is anticipating in the next couple of weeks with semifinals, and then the same with the age groups. So I love the flow right now that exists, but I do think we need a 2-week buffer, perhaps bump it 2 weeks or just delay the semifinal for the age groups so that it kind of fits the order of operations in the season.
3 points for Adrian. James?
Yes. I don't have a lot to weigh in on this one. I think this is something that, unfortunately, some parts of the season schedule continue to change. And personally, for me, if I was still competing, seriously, I would really like more predictability around the entire season. And I do believe we're headed in that direction. Again, I don't think we're headed there as fast as anybody wants. So I think more time would be excellent because that might even allow more video review process. And actually, I hadn't quite put together that the age groupers were after the CrossFit Games finals. So yeah, why are we rushing? So that's my sense there is yes. I don't think we expected the video review process to take this long or be this significant. Even though more resources have been put behind it. So yeah, sure. Let's give it more time.
It also just occurred to me.
I don't have a time. I'm sorry.
2 points for James. Go ahead, Tim.
The top 250 age groups had to submit videos. So like because there's the top 200 moved to semi. So like, I actually, now that I think about it, I'm like, yeah, what were you thinking? Like a week to review 250 videos across.
And you watch some of
like
those
500
geezers
videos.
move, man.
Oh my!
You gotta watch that thing.
But seriously,
10 angles.
But seriously,
no offense. Much love to the masters.
All love.
But
yeah,
does that like leave
500 videos
questions
per division?
If CrossFit has been spending all of this time focused in on the individual leaderboards because theirs had to be finalized first, which also, now that I'm saying it out loud, seems backwards. Are they going to actually have enough time to review the age group videos?
Hey, that's what we're saying, We're like, yo, this ain't matching up with what the order of the season is showing. So we of course hope that they're giving it the good old college try at the minimum, but it seems like we've got our back to the wall at this point in the season if that's the volume of videos that have to go through the review process.
All right, Sean, I'm going to have to call in backup because we have a tie with James and Adrian, and we're going to allow Mr. Woodland to be the tie break king.
I don't like this pressure. I feel like I got to give it to Adrian just because it's new here.
Yeah.
And James even wanted to give Adrian additional points.
And his first answer was not a 2-point answer. Sorry.
Hey, wow.
Sorry, it was a 3-4-point answer.
Congratulations.
I love it. He's giving it to him. Okay, so Adrian is our winner of this week's episode on Death By. He gets 30 seconds. The floor is yours to talk about whatever you would like.
Whatever I would like. Holy moly. Okay.
I know.
Well, here, I'll use this pedestal as an opportunity to elaborate a little bit on a post I made to social media this week about CrossFitters complaining a lot. I know that it is very natural to be upset or indifferent in your current circumstance or situation, especially if you find yourself with the short end of the stick, as they say. But I think it's important that if you find yourself as a coach, as a leader, as an affiliate owner, to remember what your role is in this space and in this community, and it is to lead people. So if you complain, they'll complain. If you whine, guess what they'll do? They'll whine too. And if you're coaching and you're leading athletes and you're whining and complaining, they're not going to have a growth mindset. They're not going to have this applied in their lifestyle at large. They're going to find reasons to bet themselves out. They're going to find reasons to not have success, and they're going to blame other people. So my rant today is to all the leaders or people who want to be leaders in our space. Mind your words because they matter. And hopefully that even when you do get the short end of the stick, you find a way to focus on what you can control. And I air this to my athletes all the time, but your focus, what you put your focus towards, you can control that, your attitude towards it, and of course your effort. And that's all we got. So that's my rant.
Growth mindset. Love to hear it. Love to hear it. Oh, James even has the little golfer's clap.
That was excellent.
5 more points for Adrian.
You guys are the best.
Mind your words because they matter. I wrote that down. God, that's nice. It's a good reminder for me.
I guarantee I didn't make it up, James. Sorry to let you down, but
never.
Well, Adrian, congratulations. Thanks for being on the show. Thank you to James, Tim, our sponsors, Garmin. You can find a link in the description for your chance to start tracking your fitness, your health, all of the good things. We will see you guys on the next episode. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And leave a comment. Let us know some questions and what you want us to talk about on the next episode.